This is a bonus episode featuring the great Bill Cardwell, drum builder and co-founder of C&C Drums.
Yeah, it was crazy. We had to move because my dad had like this insurance agency.
Okay.
And but he was also the town drunk. And it was the town my mom was from. And her family was well known in town. I mean, I lived across the street from...
Like they were well respected?
Yeah, my grandfather was on the city council. My uncle was an attorney, and you literally could go to my uncle's house, and the governor of the state of Missouri and John Glenn were there, the astronaut. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they ran in a real weird circle. And Sheryl Crow's dad was from there, and I grew up first 5 years of my life, I lived across the street from Cheryl's grandparents' grocery store.
Oh, okay.
So it was just really a farm town.
So your father pissed people off, and they had to get out of town.
Well, you know what? My dad was the greatest guy in the world until he got drunk.
Was he a mean drunk?
Oh, he was a bad, mean drunk.
Oh,
extremely mean. And I mean, the guys who were the cops were his insurance agency was catty corner from the police station,
That's
and
convenient.
the guys were his buddies,
Yeah.
But he'd make them fight him to put him in jail when
geez.
he was out, doing his thing. So he became a Christian and a preacher, all like in...
Your father did?
Yeah, like in 2 weeks' time.
Did he stop drinking?
Yeah. Totally stopped
Totally?
drinking.
Forever?
Yeah. Quit drinking.
So he saw the light.
Yeah. So, but, I mean, there was like illegal gambling going on down there. You mean
at the insurance agency?
No,
Or
I mean in the
town?
whole county.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the county sheriff was the biggest crook in the world, and the whole place down there was really, really, really strange and totally segregated, totally. And my grandfather, he owned a block on Main Street, and he lived behind it. And on one end of the street was the white movie theater, and on the other end of the street was the black movie theater. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was that segregated. Mm-hmm. So it was really I didn't like. Fortunately, my parents were the most non-racist people around, and if I have anything good to say about them, it's that.
That's the only good thing you have to say about it?
Well, no. People do the best they can raising kids.
That's right.
Equipped with what they have.
Exactly.
They do the best they can. And, people want to grow up and blame their lives on their parents. Well, you know what? You're grown. Grow up. Get over it. Go on.
Yeah, I've struggled with that because I believe that too. But I also think it's important to acknowledge whatever you inherited from your parents so that you can address it if you need to address it.
Oh yeah, like my it's this huge dichotomy between my mother's family and my father's family. My mother's family was like these extremely musical people, and my dad couldn't turn on and play a radio, and addiction, heavy in my dad's side of the family. Not so much. There's a little in my mom's family, but not work ethic. I got my work ethic from my grandfather. I wear these glasses.
Yeah.
These were my grandfather wore these glasses.
Your mother's father or your father's father?
My mother's father.
Okay.
He wore these glasses, like as long as I could remember. And I thought it was because he was a farmer. And I thought, it's so crazy. Why does he wear those flimsy glasses? But then I realized after I had to I admitted to myself I had to have glasses, I said, you know what? I'm gonna get Paul's glass. We called him Paul. I'm gonna get Paul's glasses. So they have these earpieces on them.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so you're sweating, you know, and you're out in the field. Your glasses aren't falling off. You're not having to do this all day long. So it was, you know, it was just one of those little smart things that he had going for him that he did, and he and he worked his butt off. But
so was your dad a veteran?
my dad was in the National Guard. In fact, he was away at guard camp when I was born. So.
Was he eventually able to talk about the alcoholism and the addiction in the family to you?
You know, he did, and it was as he was in 2000, as he's laying dying
on his way out.
Yeah. You know, so you know what? Late's better than never.
Yeah, that's right.
So what the heck, you know? And so he we all have limitations.
Yeah.
He just wasn't one of those people who was cut out to be a parent. I mean, he just wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, he might love his children, but he didn't know how to express it.
Did your parents stay together?
They did. My parents.
Wow.
And here's how crazy it is. My mom had gone to college down in Mississippi, and my dad was from Mississippi. So
your dad must have been a charming, good-looking guy if he got this smart girl.
Yeah, 6 foot tall, jet black wavy hair, and just Adonis looks, and could feed a line of crap better than anybody you've ever seen.
That's why he became a preacher.
Yeah, yeah. And so they married 2 weeks after they met. And my mom was like a freshman in college.
Oh, wow.
He has to take her back to her dorm the night after they got married because he's got a date.
Wow.
So, I mean, you know, come on.
So your mom, she must have loved him if she stuck with him.
Oh, yeah, she did. I mean, she really did. And I remember a point in time when I was like 7, 8 years, maybe 8 years old. You know, she booted him out, and I was destroyed. I was like, no, you can't do that. And she goes, well, you know, he's got it. Billy, he won't stop. And I go, it doesn't matter. He's my dad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there was that. For some reason, you know, there's still that bond.
Yeah.
And so it was, you know, and I had a mental thing. Even
what do you mean?
Up until I came to college, if I saw somebody drinking a beer or something, it would just like freak me out.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I associated.
Do you drink?
No, I never drank.
Yeah.
I mean, I have one brother that is virtually homeless, you know, and he's got that. And my other brother, he can drink socially, but doesn't have the problem, you know. And so I figured, you know what? Why even start it?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that was smart.
If I don't do it, I won't ever have that problem.
Well, I come from a big Irish Catholic family on my mother's side.
Oh, yeah.
And my grandfather sounds like he was kind of both of your grandfathers wrapped into one. Like he was a successful attorney up until a certain point, but then he was also an awful drunk and ruined his life.
Yeah.
And then, he was Catholic, and he and my grandmother had 11 children, and there was a lot of drinking when I was growing up. You know, and then some people managed it better than others, and then some had to quit altogether and came close to dying.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It makes me wonder how much control we actually have over our fate, and how much of it is like genetically predetermined.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I took several psychology classes.
You were trying to figure it out.
And I did,
Yeah.
I was trying, and that's one of the things I got into was stage and linear theorist. Whether you are who you are because of your DNA, or you are who you are because of your environment, and I think it ends up being a mix of the two.
The interesting thing is neither of those factors are, within our control, our environment or our DNA.
No, they're not. They're not. And to an extent, I chose where I came to go to college.
Yeah. You
so
came here?
I came here.
Yeah.
I want, after the day after Martin Luther King was killed, I said, I will not live in the South. I was in the 6th grade, and I said, I won't live here. I just won't do it. I saw him. My aunt had a stroke that paralyzed half her body, and it just happened to be at the same time. And it was on a Wednesday that Martin Luther King was shot. And I saw it come on the news, and I went into my parents'. This was after my dad had just become a preacher. And I went in and I said, Martin Luther King's been shot. And Dad said, which one? And I said, Junior. And I said, he's in Memphis. And my dad says, oh my God, And so he was really distraught about it. Well, Wednesday we have midweek prayer meeting. It's good old Southern Baptist Church. So, and I go in there and I sit down and I see these two ladies in front of me talking, and now you can't even use the word anymore in any kind of context if you're Caucasian that they used, but one of them made a statement that she was glad that was gone. He was nothing but he was nothing but a troublemaker.
Wow.
That was the perception that was, and it just so happens we lived out in the country, and we lived in Number 9, Arkansas, which was the name of a logging community. And so I had to ride a school bus into school, and I was the first one in my class, in my homeroom class in 6th grade, every day. I had this gentleman who was a black man named Herman Strickland. Young, he couldn't have been late 20s, couple of little boys, beautiful wife, intelligent man, and someone that,
He was the bus driver?
No. He was my science and math teacher.
Oh, cool.
So when I would go into I was the first one into class because my bus, the way the bus schedule, it went to all the schools. I was the first drop off, so
Gotcha.
I was there 20 minutes every day before anyone else. And I walk into the classroom, and I look at Mr. Strickland, and he has got this look on his face. He's just gazing off into nowhere, And first I was ashamed I was white, and then I learned what hatred was. Not the hatred Mr. Strickland had, but what hatred does, the effect that it has, and the effect that it was having on that man who was, someone he looked up to, had just been shot at who had gone in to march for the garbage workers were striking for, getting paid in Memphis. So it was. I decided that day that I would never stay in the South. I was a stupid kid. I didn't realize that hate was a universal thing and that there was no way to get away from it, But so I said, I'm going to get out of the South. just go somewhere. So I could have gone anywhere.
Yeah.
And this ended up being what my environment was.
You mentioned that your mother's family and your mother in particular were very musical.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of music did they introduce you to?
Well, my mom was always playing boogie woogie stuff on the piano, you know. Now, she was also the church organist, and so, you know, this massive, huge organ with all the pedals and all the, you know, and so, and she taught piano, and she taught organ, but my grandmother was into Hank Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she was always singing Goodbye Joe,
Uh-huh.
you know, all the time. I mean, I went and saw Willie now. I went and saw, actually, I'd gone to see Kenny Aronoff because he's a friend. I'd gone to see Kenny Aronoff play, and he was playing with John Fogerty, but Willie Nelson was also playing. Well, you know, I hadn't heard Goodbye Joe in years, and I'm standing there, and he starts doing Goodbye Joe. Here I am, a grown man, you know, in my early 50s, and I'm standing there bawling,
Yeah.
you know, because it reminded me so much of my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was the only person in that town who wasn't scared of my father when he was drunk. She would,
What would she do? Keep
Well,
him in line?
well, no, we would have to abandon the house when he was in the blackout.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when he would once a week he'd drink to a blackout stage. So we would have to get out of the house. Well, we didn't get out of the house quick enough one night, and we'd go stay at my grandparents'. We didn't get out quick enough, and Dad ended up with a butcher knife on my mom, and me in between several other men and a doctor who's wanting to shoot him up with something to knock him out. And my grandmother just marches in, grabs my mom, grabs me, and she says, "You hurt one of my babies, I'll kill you." So, you know, so to me she was like a hero, you know. And but she was extremely into music, and her dad, I can remember sitting out, and my grandmother's dad lived, and my great-grandfather and great-grandmother virtually lived in a shack. I mean, just had an outhouse, and, you know, they had a wood stove they cooked on and heated, and he liked to drink a bit, but he'd have a bottle stuck in his boot, and he'd sit out on his front porch with his guitar, and the Grand Ole Opry'd be on, and he'd be out there half-crocked, you know, playing the guitar and singing along with the Grand Ole Opry. Mm-hmm. So it all came from that. They were just in people who loved music. It was just the way it was. So all that early stuff that I heard, I didn't care for. I mean, you know, I thought it was funny seeing my mom on the piano just, you know, jamming away on all this stuff. But I didn't really get into music until I was about 7.
And what got you into it?
The Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show really got me into music.
Did you gravitate towards Ringo?
Yeah, I mean, well, the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, I loved the drums immediately. I don't know why, but for some reason I loved the drums immediately. But I was always, even then, I was a song person. You know, it was like the whole package. But yeah, I liked the guy who was back in the back doing his own thing, you know, and having. So I immediately fell in love with the drums.
When did you get a drum kit for the first time?
Well, that was a long process.
Okay.
I was probably 14 years old before I had a drum kit. So I probably played snare drum for 4 years before I ever touched a drum set. So it's kind of different?
Well, I feel like that's not so uncommon.
Oh, really?
I've talked to some guys that had to wait, maybe not 4 years, but and I think I had a practice pad first, a Remo practice pad.
Yeah.
Then my uncle gave me a snare drum, and then maybe a year or two later, I got a drum set.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, good.
Seems like a natural progression.
Yeah.
Well, did you want to be a professional drummer?
No, heavens no. I had no aspirations to be a professional drummer. If I wanted to be anything, I wanted to be a DJ. But
A radio DJ?
Yeah, a radio DJ, because FM radio had really just came into inception. And so at night, I could listen to FM 100 out of Memphis, and they'd sit and play entire albums, and I mean, it's totally different than what FM radio is now. And on that Mississippi River, if I wanted to listen to soul music, I could switch over to WLS coming out of Chicago. Just hit us perfect. So I got both worlds of those music going on, and so I got to learn about a lot of bands that most people down there didn't even, in Blytheville, Arkansas, knew nothing about.
Were there any particular DJs that you thought were really cool back then? Yeah, but you want me to remember their name? No, that's. But did you have like a persona in mind when you were thinking about
yeah,
being
the
a
guys,
DJ?
the guys that were really cool, laid back, not too much, just like, hey, what do you guys want to hear?
Yeah.
And I mean, it was just like somebody who was in your living room, playing records.
Mm-hmm.
So
then, after high school, you came up here for college.
I came up here for college because my cousin was up here, and he didn't bother to tell me he'd got booted out of college until I was already locked in and was coming here. There's a small, pretty religious, very religious college, but it's excellent in academics, up in Liberty, Missouri, and which is what, 20 minutes from here. It sits on top of the hill.
What's it called?
William Jewell College.
And that's where you went?
And that's where I went. I had a ministerial dependent. We didn't make a lot of money. It was like, it was like $17,000 a year back in 1974 to go to school there. And it cost me $125 a semester. So I didn't have to pay much to go to college. And I don't want to say I was a troublemaker. I was kind of a troublemaker in college because by this time I had discovered the ganja plant, which, although I never drank alcohol, I did partake of the quite a bit of weed back in my day. And my cousin gave me a phone number. He says, I'm not going to be there. He goes, call this guy up and go down to Brypo's drugstore and buy 10 cartons of cigarettes. And I said, what? And he goes, there's no cigarette machines on campus. He goes, buy 10 cartons of cigarettes. You can make money selling cigarettes. I said, you're kidding. And he goes, what's the other number? He says, just call him, take him $125. So for $125, you could get a pound of pot back then. Mm-hmm. So
was it good?
It was $15 an hour. Yeah, I mean, it was as good as what was around. Is it as good as what it became? No.
The stuff that it is today is almost too good,
yeah,
I would say.
Yeah. And I just went into, business, putting myself through college. And here I was, this guy, though, who had hair way down past his shoulders. And I would buy all my clothes from a place called the Merry-Go-Round, which was
Like a vintage store?
No, it was like a rock and roll shop.
Oh.
You know, that would be that you'd have to be. It was 70s rock and roll looking
Right.
clothes.
So like David Bowie looking
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
You mentioned before that everybody just wants to have a better life for their kids than what they've had for themselves. So what does that mean to you? Like what would a better life for your children mean?
Not have to all congregate around one stove in a room to sleep at night because it's so cold, you know. Not to be able to have comfort and a calm, nice, stable environment, you know. I mean, in those things I tried to provide for my kids. My kids are polar different. One's one end of the spectrum and one's totally the other end of the spectrum. And they were both raised the same way.
Yeah.
Totally different.
That comes back to that question of genetics.
It does.
Well, so you said your daughter's a school teacher?
Uh-huh.
Kind of doing what you studied when you were in school.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
And not only that, when she was 3 years old, she would line up all of her stuffed animals, get the dog, and have school. Mm-hmm. You know, so she was like wanted to be a school teacher before she ever got to school. I mean, this was someone who was like destined, and I go to different schools and do these presentations and stuff about drums, and I went to her class, and I'm standing there watching her, and she's directing the class, and she's 35 years old, and it's like the same 3-year-old kid that was in there talking to the stuffed animals and the dog.
Wow.
But you know what? She's done great things and changed people's lives. So.
Well, I met you about 20 years ago because I was 18 years old and I was on one of my first tours, and my band at the time played with a group called Reflector.
Oh, you're kidding.
With Jake Cardwell on the drums.
Yeah.
And at that time, he was playing a drum kit that you built for him with an 18-inch deep kick drum and a 18 by 22, and it sounded great, and it had sparkle wrap, which was actually not that common in the 90s. It was kind of vintage styled. And at the time, you had a music store in Lawrence, and I think you also had one in Kansas City.
We did, and I'd had one in Topeka, Kansas.
So how did you go from the chemical business to the music business?
I ended up operating this unit called a thermal oxidizer. We won't get into all that. If somebody cares, they, Google it. But anyway, it's as big as a city block.
So was that like a county or a city job, or what?
No,
was
that was Bayer.
Company?
That was for I'd get in an 18-wheeler and go pick up 5,000 gallons of organic waste water, and then pump it into a tank, and a holding tank that would inject it into this 12 stories tall unit. It was unreal.
Wow.
But anyway, I forget.
So you were doing that, and then how did you decide to open a music store?
Here was the deal. We worked that job. You had to keep those things going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. So if you were scheduled to work on Christmas Day, you worked on Christmas Day. Now they paid you double time and a half, but you worked. Anyway, so I worked 3 days on, 3 days off, 12-hour days. And then I'd have 3 days off. So I might come in on Monday morning. I work Monday morning, 7 in the morning till 7 at night, Tuesday and Wednesday. Then I'm off Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Well, I worked all my life. Mm-hmm. I got to have something to do.
Yeah.
And I started fixing up and selling old drums on the sideline at home.
How did you make the transition into becoming more of a manufacturer than a store owner?
It's funny. This kid came in my store one day, a little old bitty runny kid, but just, just Mr. Tough Guy, businessman. And I think you probably know him. Well, his name's Ryan Pope.
Yeah.
And he was buying his second drum set. And I sold him a used Premier drum set that so the name really got out there. Ryan Pope was the first guy to take CNC drums on the road.
And when did it get to the point where you thought, oh, this actually could be a viable business unto itself?
Never.
Yeah.
No, seriously, never. Bayer decided to offer a buyout, and I'd been there 25 years, and I wanted out of there. And they were offering full benefits, everything vested, whatever you wanted. I was 47 years old, and I'd sold the store already in Topeka, sold the store in Lawrence, and was just getting ready. Decided a new Guitar Center was coming to Kansas City, and I go, you know what? There's not room for everything. They're going to put one up here in my part of town. I'm going to lose my rear end. So I sold that. I ended up selling that store after I'd met a gentleman who was working for Hoshino.
Which is the company that owns Ibanez and Tama.
Right. And who was extremely encouraging to me. And they own the name Camco. And he always had this vision of, gee, maybe we can get Camco going again. People tried to bring old names back. And I literally built my shop because I thought the Japanese were going to allow us to build drums under the name of Camco.
Mm.
So I didn't even do it for the right reason. And, of course, they they nixed it in a heartbeat. And I ended up doing some work with them anyway, just to take their money. Yeah, and this gentleman now is working with me.
Oh, great.
Their former CEO is now working with us, which is going to be a great addition to the place.
So you mentioned that you never really thought of it as a viable business.
I didn't.
What are you most passionate about when it comes to making drums now, or when it comes to the company as a whole?
Look, you're no better than the last drum set you built, and there's such a demand that, and we've kept it so small that I haven't grown it properly. You need to allow it to grow, and you need to be able to train people, to do more and more and more things.
Mm-hmm.
When you said, hey, can you come at 2:30 instead of 2? It's like, sure, great. I can go in here and I can get this done and get this done and get this done. That'll work great. That'll work fine for me. Just knock out a few more things. I shouldn't be having to do that on Sunday, should I?
So what's the direction that you want the company to head moving forward?
I want it to grow vastly. If anything that I've learned from working with and speaking with and being not. I want to. He's the same age I am. I want to use the word mentoring because he has mentored me a lot in business. I'm not a businessman. I'm a drum builder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have ideas. I have shell constructions in my head. Jake, he's got his world of building that he's into. So, you know, that we're not there. Building drums is only one aspect of having a drum company. There's all this business junk out here on the side that has to be dealt with, handled, and addressed daily,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So
who's the mentor?
it's Bill Rem, the guy who was CEO of Hoshino.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And, I mean, it came at a time where I was like, okay, do I cut this back on this place and then just make it really exclusive, or do I go ahead and do we decide to go for it and really be a drum company, you know, and go forward with it and produce more? I mean, I've got 3 shell constructions in my head that we have built prototype drum sets on, sent guys out on the roads with them, and all of them are like, yeah, you got to do, yeah, you know, that I've never built another drum set with that shell construction, you know. But we're not ready to bring on 3 new drum shell lines. We don't even have on our website the maple gum drums that we build, and they're probably one of the finest drum sets
They're
that
great.
we're building.
I have one of the snares.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, and the toms are magical because so often the toms are the hardest thing for me to build, to get them to match, you know, for what my ear is. And I don't, you know what, growing up I could play the first 2 books of the John W. Sham piano lessons just from hearing my mother giving piano lessons.
Mm-hmm.
But basically I have a tin ear, you know. I mean, my ear's just not, but I can hear tone, and I know tone, and I know what I want out of tone, and the concept for years and years and years was more resonance, more resonance, more resonance. And you look at all these drums that were being built with super thin shells with reinforcement rings in them, and people were just gaff taping the hell out of them to kill all that tone,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So I want to be able to build different versatile drum shells that speak to different people in different ways and what people are hearing in their head and want to hear when they hit the drum. And I think we're really close to fulfilling the majority of those issues. But I want to have a full range. We've got hardware ideas that we want to build, you know, but I want to build stuff here. I don't want to build stuff halfway across the world and then have it shipped here,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and throw a name on it.
Is anybody doing that, making all of their parts in the U.S.?
Not that I know of. I'm sure, you know, if I say
Yeah.
that there isn't, then
Maybe somebody is, but
somebody
not that
will
you know
say, well, I'm so and so, you know, and I do. So I don't know. To a huge degree, I don't think so. I mean, no major drum company, nobody who's a major player that I know of.
What makes your company different?
I don't know. I don't know what makes us different. I try to build drums that I know. All I know is feedback that I get.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I get feedback that the drums are easy to play. I get feedback that the drums are easy to tune. Unless I make a mistake, yours might have been one that the snare beds weren't deep enough.
That might have been actually true.
You know,
I had to file them down a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I will say it's the best sounding snare drum I have, and I've recorded at some pretty nice studios in LA, and I had a chance to try it up against lots of different other snares that were in the arsenal at the studio, and the CNC. It was a 4 by 14-inch maple gum.
Yeah.
It wins out every time.
Oh, does it really?
Yeah.
It's a great size snare drum. I don't know why 4x14's lost such favor in the world. I don't.
Well, I liked it because Gretsch made a Max Roach model.
Oh, sure they
that
did.
Size.
Yeah.
And I asked Jake, hey, can you make something kind of like that with the maple gum?
Yeah.
And it sounds fantastic.
Yeah. And the only thing we did different on those shells than what the old 60s Gretsch shells were is we ran that interior ply horizontal rather than vertical.
Oh, okay.
I did change it ever so slightly because I never liked the way the 60s Gretsch snare drums sounded, and I think that was the reason I didn't like them, because they were just too muddy for me. And if you turn that ply around, you give it the shell more strength, and you definitely give it more resonance. I mean, it gives it a more of an attack than all this muddy overtone that I got out of those drums. But anyway, and it was just, I did make a shell identical to the way they did it, and said, but I'm not out to
replicate.
Yeah, to replicate. I'm out to take their. I mean, everything we build, we've ripped off somebody's idea. I know a lot of people who ripped off people's ideas, and they act like it's some new big great thing, And it's like, dude, that was done 50 years ago. What are you talking about? But yeah, I want the company to way outlive me. That's what I want the company to do.
How do you like working with your son?
We're smart enough in that 90% of the time we give each other space. I mean, I have no problem working with my son. I'm sure he has more problem having to work with his father than. So you have to, and as far as taste is concerned, he comes up with so many great ideas that, I never would have thought of, because I'd have said that was stupid before it was done, but then when it's seen. But for years I had to facilitate, if he had an idea, I had to be the guy to build it. Well, he grew up, a few years ago, and he said, I'm going to learn how to build drums. I mean, and then he didn't come to me to ask me. He just started going in there on the router table, and I'm going, hang on, time out, I can help you with this stuff, and so he was smart enough that he realized, but we worked extremely hard together. 2011, we spent a lot of that year, and it was a rough year, 2011 was, for the company, but we worked on that Player Date 1 kit together a lot, and when I was finally able to source the wood that I wanted and how I wanted it to be, and Jake had the idea of the edges, and then we started refining those edges to how we were going to build them, and so that's probably the last time that we really went back and forth working on something really, really hard together. He's developed his own skill set that he doesn't need me to help him with a lot of stuff. Now, that being said, he's a wild man that has to be under control sometimes, because...
Can you control Jake?
Well, I mean, there's Yeah, if you've got a cutoff tool in your hand that's going to take your fingers off, and you're sitting there cutting a piece of metal and you're cutting it towards you, where that if you go through that metal and you don't stop it, you're going to cut all the fingers off on your other hand. Yeah, I can control it.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah. What do you think about the most throughout the day?
What do I think about most? What I'm going to get at, what's going to be done tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But it's done through the course of doing the work that's being done today and where I'm going to be tomorrow on it.
Mm-hmm.
And where, because there's so many orders, there's constant pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't allow people's desire for you to ship those drums today, by golly, or I don't want them, then don't take them then, if it's going to be tomorrow before they're done, because it's just not worth it. You can't stick your name on something and not be proud of it. So, I worry about getting. I want to see it. I want to see a whole stack of shells, and I want to see a whole ton of boxes being filled up at the same time, and stuff constantly moving. That's what I have to think about every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so, sometimes do I not want to go to work? Sure.
You mean like if it feels overwhelming?
Yeah. But you have to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it is overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's just too much. But that's where it's important to find people who, are trainable and are going to fit in a mix of other people, because everybody has to be working together. As soon as everybody's not working together, you've got cancer involved.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know what cancer does because it's affected virtually everyone's life in some way or another. It just starts eating away at it. So, it's... Some people call it art, but I don't think it's art. I think it's just craft. It's craftsmanship. So I just want the best craftsmen doing the best work they can and helping me and grow it that way.
If you could go back in time for 5 minutes and talk to 20-year-old Bill Cardwell, what would you want to tell him?
That go to a different school.
Right, why would you have gone to a different school?
I didn't fit in where I was. I still did. I went someplace that I was an oddball.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was told there weren't people like me around. There just wasn't. So
where did you meet your wife?
I met her at a party in Columbia, Missouri.
Okay. So she wasn't part of the same school?
No.
Okay.
No.
So what do you think, how do you think your life would have been improved if you went to a place where you were in a community of people that thought the same way as you?
That's the big question mark, you know. Who would I have been then?
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have been a drum builder.
Yeah, I mean sometimes being in an environment where you are the oddball is what gives you strength or gives you clarity of thought to figure out who you are as a person.
So, those kinds of questions end up being, does it really matter?
Yeah.
because it's, you know, not pertinent. It ends up not being pertinent.
What's your sense of spirituality now?
Well, you caught me at an odd time for that. No, I mean, yeah. Have you ever read the Bible?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So the answer is no. And so,
Well, like to be clear, I took one theology class where we read the Bible. But other than, I was raised in a family that was, my mom had been raised Catholic, decided that the religious thing wasn't for her.
yeah.
And so we didn't go to church when I was a kid at all.
Right.
And we
Yeah.
didn't believe in any of that stuff. It wasn't like, my mom said, feel free to experiment. If you want to go to church, I'll drive you there, but I'm not coming in.
Yeah. And forget about church.
Yeah.
No, okay. See, that's what, as far as American Christianity is concerned, I really don't want to have anything to do with it
Uh-huh.
because it's kind of become amalgamated
Yeah.
into, this oddball thing that has nothing to do with being spiritual. I recently had a head injury that caused me to reflect greatly on a whole lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I went out to the Styx show to see Todd, and Troy Lucetta. Tesla was playing before him. In Troy, I'd built a acrylic drum set for several years ago. Anyway, I was there, and I'm standing up, and Todd had asked me to check his drum sounds out front before they went on, and I was like, I want to go home. I went all the way to my car. I said, I don't feel good. I don't need to be here. I got to feeling guilty, guilt. Guilt and fear are the two worst things in the world. So I get out of my car. I go back into the show. I get in there. I grab a water. I drink about 2 or 3 drinks of it. I'm standing there. My stomach started going, churning. My head started spinning. I said, you're getting ready to go out. And they say that I got about 2 feet from the chair I was trying to get to sit down. And I leaned forward, and as I'm doing this now, I'm feeling electricity going through my body, as I call it. And then my head went back.
Oof.
I hit the concrete. They said it bounced about 10 inches off the concrete and hit it again.
Yeah.
I was out for 4.5 minutes. So I passed out, and then I knocked myself out. And while I was knocked out, I'm sitting there looking at this beautiful oval halo around my head of blood. My glasses are gone, nothing there, and I'm looking at me. And there's a lady over me saying, I can't get a pulse. And maybe I'm the biggest narcissist in the world, but I said, I could see myself looking at myself. I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. They say, your brain does weird things when you're knocked out, and you can be imagining, but I don't know how I saw that lady in that pink jumpsuit, who happened to be a nurse, over me trying to get vital signs. And then all I heard for a minute is you're not supposed to be here. And bam, I come back to. And I had the worst pain I'd ever felt in my life. They had stapled my head back together, and then her and the guy next to her started arguing about whether or not I was. See, he is alive. I told you he wasn't. So I wasn't dead, but I kind of jarred myself. So the myself that I jarred is the real me. And I know that sounds nutty, but I'm sorry, this isn't all there is. And I've never felt peace like that in my entire life. Total peace.
So what do you draw from that other than that this isn't all there is? I mean, has it changed your notion of spirituality?
It's not changed my notion of spirituality. I know there's a land where there isn't time. I do know that. Before I ever went to the first grade, I had no idea what a classroom looked like. First day I went to first grade, guess what? I knew what a classroom looked like. We don't know what the other side looks like.
That's true.
Not till we see it. And I wasn't supposed to see it.
You got a sneak peek.
I didn't really get a sneak peek at that. I got a sneak peek at myself. And
so what happened?
How hard I am.
What was wrong with yourself? It was just
I had
from
a
the
heat stroke. I had a full-on heat stroke. They told me that all the fluid that surrounds the brain, that I had depleted myself. I never drank water. I drank Dr. Pepper and coffee. Those were my two drinks. That's all I ever drank.
That's really healthy.
Yeah. Guess who drinks water now?
Yeah, you're drinking a bottle of water right now. Well, okay, so, sorry, you said that experience made you realize that you're too hard on yourself?
Yeah.
So have you been able to change your behavior at all?
Yeah, to an extent. I'm working through it, you know?
Yeah. It's not something that you can just decide to change.
Yeah.
So what does that mean, like, in practice? How do you... That's something I'm working at, too. But, like, how do you be kinder to yourself?
You know, and now I sound like a Bill Murray movie. Baby steps, I guess. I mean, you know, with me it started with water, and then it started with, you know what, you need to be physically doing things more. You need to be walking. You need to be doing the stairs at the shop when you don't need to do the stairs at the shop several times. You need to be taking better care. You need to watch what you're putting in your mouth when you go to eat something, you know. I mean, all these things. It left me though with a slight. I mean, the nerve endings didn't quite totally heal. So when I do this, when I look down like that,
yeah,
I just felt a shock wave go underneath my skin from here all the way down my
down your arms.
When I came to, from my elbows to my fingertips were dead. I mean, they were just dead. They were limp. There was nothing there. I couldn't move them, and so they're throwing me in a wheelchair, and I'm going, God, take me out of here, just, I'm ready. I'm going, let's go. So I think I was left with a slight reminder of just doing that doesn't hurt. That no CAT scan sees anything other than, well, maybe it'll heal, maybe the rest of it won't heal up anymore, but it doesn't have any negative effect on my life. What do? I try. If we just try to do the right thing, I think things will kind of work out.
Well, I think that's a great place to end it. Bill Cardwell, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.